Hello.
Run, come on! It's getting closer! Don't look back!
As terrifying as it is, knowing how much care everybody has put into this and knowing what the ultimate goal of storytelling is, it allows you then to go on the ride and not turn away when it gets too hard, but to just kind of face it and move through it. And so it did. It felt very like a full circle moment. Like I came back to my 14-year-old self and went, this is why I love great horror.
I'm Marc Bernardo.
And I'm Princess Weeks.
And this is the official It Welcome to Derry podcast.
We're back for episode 3.
And things in Derry are disappearing.
Literally, memories, people, maybe even sanity. This episode has us questioning what is real, who is safe, and why do the children not have better self-preservation instincts?
For real. And we are breaking it all down today with some incredible guests. Co-showrunners, executive producers, and writers, Jason Fuchs and Brad Caleb Kane.
Plus Kimberly Guerrero, who plays Rose, and like us, questions why the government is out here trying to mobilize Derry's monster.
Yes, humanity's favorite pastime, trying to control the uncontrollable.
Because what could possibly go wrong when you weaponize a cosmic clown?
Not a goddamn thing. But hey, now we're in it for episode 3, Now You See It. Written by Guadalise Del Carmen and Gabe Hobson, and directed by Andrew Bernstein.
Beware, spoilers for episode 103 are ahead. Let's get into it.
Hell yeah. There's a lot to talk about in this episode, but one of them is definitely, it is always 10 p.m. in Derry and no one knows where their children are.
It's madness. You know what? Especially the Black family. Like, you need to know where that child is. This is new territory.
All right, we're skipping ahead. We're jumping too far. We open in 1908, a deep flashback to a carnival that shows up in Derry. Our young Francis, poor Francis, is investigating the carnival. He sees the Hall of Human Curiosities.
Step right up, folks, into a grotesquerie of horrors beyond your darkest imaginings.
Eagle-eyed viewers might notice a familiar face playing the piano.
Andy!
None other than Andy Muschietti.
I love a director's cameo. Tasteful, elegant, fun. It was great to see him.
Absolutely. And so, poor Francis just walks deeper and deeper into this tent that feels like it was made to kidnap children.
Right. There are often times when I watch a horror movie or show where I'm just like, man, I'm so glad that would never happen to me. Because just hearing an old man voice saying, come closer, and he approaches. And I'm just like, Francis, why? Love yourself. You don't have to do everything a grown-up tells you. You don't know him. They didn't have stranger danger ads back then.
Apparently not. So Francis gets scared out of the Hall of Human Curiosities. Car breaks down, as they do.
Classic.
Thankfully for Francis and his dad, there's a little clutch of Indigenous kids just selling water in jars.
I just couldn't help but think, man, it was so easy to meet people back then. You didn't need Tinder. You didn't need Hinge. You could just go walk. And there you find a beautiful woman with a watering jug.
Which is every boy's dream.
Some girls' dreams as well, I will
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we get the introduction of what I've like to call Chekhov's slingshot.
That's all I got.
That a slingshot?
They become fast friends, Francis and Rose, and they're just gallivanting in the forest as kids do.
Just running into dark, unlit parts of the forest. I'm like, Francis, there's so much light everywhere else. Why must thou go deeper into the darkness? And also, your lovely, beautiful girlfriend is telling you, don't go. And he's like, no, I'm gonna keep going.
Wait, Francis! No! Come back!
Listen to women. Believe women.
At every turn.
At every turn, because then you wouldn't have to deal with the skeleton man, because that was creepy.
The creepiest thing that I'm finding serially in this show is there's a regular average scene and then somebody leans into it kind of creepily.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Francis is just like, hey, stuck in the forest, I'm in Sherwood, where are the merry men? And then suddenly the skeleton man's just like,
Hello.
And then this skeleton man is clearly Pennywise, right? Pennywise. He opens his big old mouth and we see those familiar rows of terrifying teeth. And he's like Spider Skeleton Man now. And then thank God young Rose shows up with the damn slingshot.
And that's why we don't need guns. Bring back the slingshot, a real skill weapon.
Yeah. And then we bounce back out into our story proper. Mm-hmm. And then we pop into Juniper Hill to see what has happened to poor Lily.
I do like that they kind of tease us with the horror of the institution, but they we're not going to actually show the child torture. We're going to just show all the child gore. But it was nice to have one person, Ingrid, that actress I'm a huge fan of in other projects.
Yeah.
But I've never seen her play a nice person before. So that was exciting.
Yeah, Madeline Stowe has not had a great run of being just like regular lady who offers kindly advice.
She usually is there to serve very mean girl, but fashion energy, which I love. That's my favorite archetype of brunette. But I'm sure Lily just needed someone to tell her, you're not crazy. I believe you if you told me that you saw the impossible. And I'm like, thank you.
Most people, they only believe what they can see with their own eyes.
Then we see poor Hank Grogan.
Poor thing.
Ronnie's dad is cooling his heels in the Hooskow.
But during that whole scene, we get a shout out to Shawshank.
Yeah, we do. Pew pew.
You know what they do to kitty killers in Shawshank?
Yeah, that Shawshank reference made me kick my feet like it was an ex-boyfriend that I wanted to call me back again. Just because, again, the expansion of the world is so interesting. And it's something that we see replicated in all the different works that this is based off of.
I know.
Just the idea of this character being put in that situation, I'm just kind of like, no. Will we meet Red? Just all these ideas going on in my head.
It's that thing when you're familiar with a universe and you're waiting for it to connect. And you're just like, oh, did they do the thing? Oh, did they do the thing? And they're starting to do the thing, which is pretty great. I do feel bad for poor Hank Grogan, though, because, there have been sworn statements. They found cigarettes at the crime scene. Officer Bowers is doing his best to entrap this dude. It's clear, though, even though Hank might not have been at the movie theater during the big massacre, he was somewhere at 11:30 p.m.
I know. I was like, were you meeting a lady friend or a man friend? I mean, something that he's afraid to share with his mom and his daughter. So I'm like, something suspicious is going on here.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's doing Clown College Night School and he realizes that this is not the town for Clown College Night School. But yeah, things are looking bad for old Hank.
But it is going worse for Ronnie. Poor thing.
Can you imagine? Your dad turns out to be a psycho killer.
Hatchet Hank is gonna fry?
These kids need to go to jail. Why are these kids so mean? Get a job. Leave. And also, Hatchet Hank, he has a nickname already. These kids are bored. Get them in a creative writing class. But I do appreciate that Lily decides that she wants to take responsibility for her actions and try and get some evidence because no one will believe her because they think she's a crazy girl.
Yeah, I do like how Lily sort of rounded the corner of they're going to throw me in here anyway. Even if I said the truth, they would have done this because nobody wants to believe it. So your dad's kind of screwed, Ronnie, and would have been screwed without me.
Exactly.
Even if I had said the right thing. So now it's, let's get a camera.
People only believe what they can see for themselves. You actually think this thing is gonna stop and pose for pictures? What if we gotta lose? It's worth a shot.
We discover then that General Shaw, who we still don't know who General Shaw is, but we will very shortly, he's looking for something that had been buried 300 years before the Cadillac they found was even invented. And we're talking about the entity, not just an artifact, some kind of living, breathing, undead thing. I don't know what Shaw expects to do with whatever entity he's looking for in the woods. Hard to weaponize the supernatural. I mean, the Nazis tried and failed. We all saw Raiders. We know how that goes.
Exactly. But, the American government loves to use its tax dollars for just the most efficient things.
Indeed. So how about we send a giant helicopter, put Dick in the back seat, give him a box. What's in the box?
What's with the cigars?
No cigars in here.
Well, then what's in it?
You wouldn't understand.
Chekhov slingshot. It's back again.
The slingshot, baby.
He needs something that put its mark on that thing a long time ago.
And I will say the imagery of Dick in the plane and getting his first vision that we see was very effective. I mean, that was one of my favorite shots of the episode, I have to say.
Yeah, walking through the passenger bay of a helicopter and suddenly there's water on the floor. The giant sewer lid opening hatch thing, and then now we're in Pennywise's sewer.
So creepy.
It all comes together. There are kids floating, poor Hallorann's dead grandma.
He's coming, Dickie. Get out of here now.
It's all really beautiful. It's all really evocative. And I will say it does sort of feel at times overwhelming because there's just so much happening. I'm so interested in the idea of like the US government is gonna try and weaponize it against Russia. Like we're gonna fight communism with a clown is just so peak. That's peak television.
It really is. I want the meeting where General Shaw walks into like Eisenhower's office and says, I know what to do about the Russians. Ghost power.
Literally send in the clowns.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that we are seeing the pressure that Dick is under to not just provide like his expertise, but also he allows the rest of his Black comrades to really get any benefits. Like when we see them playing cards, he's the one who's responsible for taking care of them. So he has this added responsibility of like, he can't fail doubly because of the expectations put on him by so many other people.
Yeah, and another thing that I appreciate is that this isn't really a Dick Hallorann origin story. Dick is already Dick by the time we meet him. He's already, like, when he's encountering weird-ass shit in a helicopter in the sewers, he doesn't waffle under it. Like, he's wide-eyed about it. Like, he knows what he's dealing with.
It wasn't supposed to see us. It wasn't supposed to know. I got a feeling we keep on like we doing, something bad's coming. Maybe we ought to just let this thing be.
He adds a grounded level of, we have one semi-expert, someone who knows the most about what's going on.
Right. And he can then warn everybody who will not listen to him.
Exactly. And I guess we also find out why General Shaw is so woke, because, as the kids would say, it's because we find out that, he was Francis.
What do you have for a nickel?
Francis Shaw.
Francis Shaw.
Francis Shaw.
Has it really been 50 years? Doesn't seem possible.
No, it doesn't.
It's the oddest thing. Before I got here, I didn't remember you at all.
You really know how to flatter a gal.
I mean, I didn't remember any of it. You, this town.
You're not the first. Derry's funny that way.
Which I like that explanation because, again, why would anyone choose to live here with the awareness of what's going on? But there is something about Derry that makes people forget experiences. And I think that has to exist because this place is so fucked up.
Yes, it would be a depopulated zone if anybody remember what happened. Although, how does that jive with the Losers Club remembering what they went through in Derry?
Well, they don't remember all of it sometimes. I think that's kind of what's interesting is how much of it is the magic and how much of it is children suppressing what's going on. So it's all those kind of added psychological, half magical layers to it.
It was one summer, Francis. We were 12. I doubt you even remembered my name.
I didn't.
Then their sweet, sweet reunion is interrupted by Rose's discovery that Francis, General Shaw, is behind all these digs going on.
We're trying to figure out where to lay pipe to bring in water from the Kenduskeag.
And our community is concerned that your dig will disturb sacred remains. We can't allow unmarked burial grounds to be destroyed.
And I was right, listeners, about the Indian burial ground where they're digging up to find this ancient artifact is in a place that is a holy site, religious site for this tribe. And Shaw is being here like, no, I'm the friendly U.S. military. Let me help you to not desecrate your ancestral sites. If we work together, everyone will win. That's like the history of this country. My other favorite scene was, Hallorann going to the family home and getting some more insight into the family. I love the dynamic between the two parents. I love that you have the activist mom and the steadfast soldier dad and them trying to figure out how to navigate their different identities in this new space. Because now we really know that mama does not want to be here.
No.
She does not want to be here at all.
I'm here for an awkward dinner. Dick is like, yo, I'm cool. Your wife can cook. I kind of dig you. You pulled me out of diving out of the back of a helicopter. I'm down with this family. But he just walks into this, the ley lines of ambition and fear and just, it was a delicious couple of scenes watching Dick just kind of like, hey, what's going on here?
So where's your son at tonight?
Where's your son? I didn't tell you I had a son.
You'll meet him sometime. But he's at a friend's house now.
I don't know. He's at a friend's house. Meanwhile, raising spirits in the cemetery.
Exactly.
Walking into crypts, which you should never do, Will.
Never do that.
Never do it. And I will say that I am here for creepy statue shit. Like that moment where we're kind of panning by, you know, Jesus holding onto this little heart-shaped herb. Suddenly his face turns and smiles. Yes, this is tight.
Oh my God. I love it, but I hate it. I was traumatized from the episode Blink from Doctor Who, and I lived by a church my entire childhood. So there's nothing creepier than the idea of a Jesus statue turning and looking at me. Like, no, please, I'm so sorry. But it's so effective. It's so evocative. And I just love the ways in which the atmosphere just totally shifts. As much as they're bike riding, you feel as if they're being like sucked into the darkness around them. It's just, it really made me nervous because I know that they could die.
Because in the first episode, we set up a losers club that we thought was going to be the losers club. And then like 3/4 of them just get whacked by demon baby movie screen things. And so it's like, oh, we're just down to kill children on the show. Like, are any of these kids going to survive?
Right. Because I think that's the thing I'm also wondering is that they're not, except for one, they're not going to be resources for the next iteration of the Losers Club, which is not that far in the future from them. So it's like, it almost puts this extra tension of, we don't know if any of these kids are going to make it. And that's nerve-wracking for me. Like, I don't think anything really truly prepares you for that. But it is my favorite thing to see how all of these timelines are going to come together and tell this story.
Indeed.
That is not the end of anything. It's just the beginning of more terror.
The people weaving all these storylines together, they know exactly how to make us lose sleep. Executive producers and co-showrunners Jason Fuchs and Brad Caleb Kane are two of the folks daring to connect every Losers Club, every timeline, every Easter egg, every memory on the page.
Hey there, I am Jason Fuchs.
Hi, I'm Brad Caleb Kane.
Jason and Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Good morning.
So excited to be here.
When did Welcome to Derry first cross your desks?
I was working on it chapter 2. It was the end of that process, and Andy mentioned to me almost as an aside, hey, we're talking to Stephen King about doing an It prequel TV series. Would that be something you want to develop with Barbara and I? And the answer, of course, was yes. That was a sort of a life-changing or at least career-changing moment. I developed a pilot with them throughout most of 2021. And as we waded into 2022, Brad came into the picture. I'd never worked in television. Brad has this outstanding body of work in the TV space. And so Brad and I were teamed up, and we built it from there.
Yeah, it was great. I was working on season 2 of Tokyo Vice and season 3 of Warrior, and I was actually preparing before Welcome to Derry came across my desk to go run Warrior in South Africa, season 3. And then this opportunity came across my desk. I've been a Stephen King fan all my life. I read this pilot for Welcome to Derry that Jason wrote, and I was completely blown away. And I said, I would love to get into this world with them. Can I get a meeting? And we all vibed, you know, me and Jason and Andy and Barbara, and the rest is history.
Brad is the one who came in and read my pilot and went, this is terrific, and I love what you've done, and I love these characters, and I want to kill them all. That was him. And I think you said that maybe even in the first pitch. Like, right from the start, that was one of your initial instincts.
Gotta kill him.
And Brad and I have to say, we definitely did vibe. We have oddly parallel tracks in our lives. We both started out as actors in New York. We both started out in musical theater. We went to the same multiple high schools, Dalton and the Professional Children's School.
Yeah.
We went to the same vocal coach, Bob Marks.
Yeah.
So we'd been on these. I was certainly aware of Brad and his work, and it was sort of felt like kismet to finally connect and get to collaborate on this.
Samesies.
Was there any trepidation about
Brad? Tremendous trepidation about Brad.
About me? Yeah.
I still have it.
Only confirmed when we worked together for 3 years.
Amazing. But I mean, like, the King universe is vast and wide. Was there any fear or apprehension about working in a previously unexplored territory like this?
Yeah, I mean, we're huge King fans. We're huge fans of it. So apprehensive to the extent that the novel and obviously the films that Andy and Barbara made set a very high creative bar. The novel in particular was extremely impactful for me reading at a young age. So you want to try to meet that level of creative excellence. You don't want to let yourself down as a fan. So yeah, sure, there's lots of feelings of apprehension, but mostly just excitement and opportunity.
I was never apprehensive. I charge into things, and my feeling is like, again, like Jason said, huge Stephen King fan all my life. I'm the kid who, read It and Cujo and all of these books under his covers with the flashlight on, terrified that, his mom would pull it aside and catch me reading Stephen King, of all terrible things you can catch your, preteen son doing under the covers. But in terms of like an artwork, no, you have to be bold. You have to make something your own. We always knew we were in safe hands because Andy and Barbara are the stewards of this franchise, obviously. So they weren't going to let us make any big missteps. Mr. King was always there to lend a helping hand or a note. He read everything that came across his desk. We pitched him, the larger story, and hopefully the fans like it. And I am a fan. I count myself among them. So I feel like if I like it, somebody out there will.
Okay, take us inside the writer's room. How did you guys go about building a staff?
We were looking for writers who were character first. The thing that Brad and I get the most excited about in general creatively, but particularly on this show, is the opportunity to really delve into these characters. I think all the fears and all the horror is grounded in that. And we're looking for people who you could feel would enter into that room and come in with a collaborative spirit. And we were lucky enough to find a number of writers who were exactly that.
Yeah, we look for people who are willing to take all the guardrails off. You want to show people things that they've never seen before, especially within a familiar universe, within a story that a lot of people are familiar with. And so you want people who are willing to, go there.
Although I will say there was one writer we very much wanted to hire for the room who was unavailable, which was you. So I'm glad we're finally getting to meet. But truly, you're an example of the kind of writer we were seeking out.
Yeah.
Obviously, fan of your work.
We had one writer early on in the initial room where it was just me, Jason, Andy, and Barbara, and one other writer who really, really helped us break the meat of the story, who's Cord Jefferson. And he really brought his lived experience to the story. We really based, in many ways, our lead character, Leroy Hanlon, on Cord's dad. Cord was very generous to share with us, the stories of his father, who's a military man and, a Republican at a time when you wouldn't think a black man would be in America in the 1950s and 60s. And he was very generous to let us build the story around an avatar of his dad, and he was so key in us breaking this thing.
Yeah, he was amazing to work with. We felt very
Cord's
honored.
a
We
good
are
dude.
lucky to have gotten him.
Cord's a good dude. And thank you. That's very flattering. I was hoping to get to revisit Juniper Hill a second time, but it wasn't in the cards, sadly.
Next time.
Next time.
Next time. So a lot of Welcome to Derry builds on names we already know, like Dick Hallorann, like the Hanlons, but the show finds a way to make them feel brand new. What made those stories the right ones to expand?
We were very happy just to tell the story of the Hanlons, which we thought was interesting in and of itself. This not really fractured family, but definitely simmering tensions within the family for reasons that, hopefully the listeners understand now. The different viewpoints of everybody in the family, the difficulty of father and son, generationally to relate to each other and trying to figure out ways to bridge that divide. And obviously this adventure with it, and that felt rich enough, without diving too deeply into Stephen King's larger universe.
And by the way, touching on episode 3, where we obviously have Dick Hallorann's first sort of encounter with it, we were just excited about the idea of it encountering another special. It, at least in the experiences we've seen of it so far, has only met other humans. And so the idea of it going up against someone who's sort of got these other abilities felt really interesting, exciting, and like there was a lot of potential. And obviously this episode is just the beginning of that.
Talking about Dick Hallorann, his abilities, his powers, they're kind of this elusive thing. It seems to be telepathy sometimes, and then it seems to be precognition sometimes. Talk me through the process of kind of redefining and recalibrating what his power was for you guys and how you made it work.
I mean, I think some of the less clear rules around power worked for us in the show because Dick Hallorann doesn't quite understand his power fully at this point in his journey. He knows he has a gift. He knows that that gift has a downside. He's struggling with that gift and how much gift, how much curse it is. So yeah, he's still at a much earlier point in his journey. He's still coming into his own. And so it allowed us space to explore those abilities and really to approach it fresh for an audience who maybe isn't familiar with him from other Stephen King lore. And he's a guy who only cares about himself at this point. He is not a part of this story at this stage because he cares about a greater cause. He's not there because he believes in whatever they're up to at the Derry Air Force Base, Operation Precept. He doesn't care about that. He's there because he got himself into a pickle and he has to do this to get out of it. So that's a fun character to write.
Yeah, and it is an amorphous ability even in The Shining. And we played with that. And, we did talk a little bit about the rules, how much he can do, how far he can go. And we tried not to push it too far, but as far as we could where it served the story and the character.
And I will just add, as much as we had a good sense of what we wanted to do with Dick Hallorann and we had plans and we enjoyed writing him, we found his voice to some degree on the page. When Chris Chalk came in and embodied that role, it just elevated the whole thing. I mean, Chris is such a spectacular actor. He's so interesting. He brings so many different textures. I mean, it just, that character took off when Chris walked into that room and started to play with it and create. And that's part of the fun of TV, is that you're getting an opportunity to play off the actors, to build off their strengths, to see what they're interested in, what they like to do. Long-form TV provides a lot of opportunities. And I say this as someone who's been mostly in the feature space. It provides a lot of opportunities you don't get in the film world. And I think we're all the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, Chris himself will tell you, his Hallorann doesn't give a fuck. His Hallorann doesn't give a shit about anybody but Hallorann. And having him have to work with somebody like Leroy Hanlon, who is very much a by the rules, by the book, flyboy guy, because, when you fly a plane, if you're in that cockpit, you follow the rules, you follow the manual, or people die. And that's Leroy Hanlon. I don't think Dick Hallorann cares anything about that. So putting those two guys together, having them try to work together, that seemed interesting to us too.
The dinner scene is really one of the first moments in the series.
Yes. Oh,
where
gosh,
you see
that
them
dinner
squaring
scene.
off. And you see Dick quite literally going into Leroy's head again. And you see Leroy sort of starting to realize Dick's abilities. It's interesting, we thought, to see these two very formidable characters matched up against each other. And at this point in the season, it's pretty unclear if they're going to be enemies, allies, neutral. Like, how are they going to bounce off each other? That felt like a fun thing to play with. I think the dinner scene between Charlotte, Leroy, and Dick is one of my favorite scenes in the episode. Certainly one of my favorite scenes even in the early part of the season.
The Major is worried my activism will reflect poorly on him with his colleagues, hamper his ascent up the military food chain.
I can see how that could be a concern, man. It's hard enough being colored in the service. And you got any real ambition, you're gonna want your personal life to be cleaner than your uniform.
Well, not surprised y'all two flyboys stick together.
It is the melding of these two guys with not only very different viewpoints, but these sort of uniquely appropriate powers. Obviously, Dick Hallorann's powers are of the supernatural variety.
My grandmama said it's like seeing things without seeing things. Yeah, I know. Sound crazy, right?
The place I grew up, everybody knew someone who knew someone that was like that. I've just never seen it for myself.
But we're starting to see how that blend of a guy with those special abilities in Dick Hallorann can meld with a guy who is fearless because of his injury in the Korean War.
It's like the part of your brain that's supposed to be afraid, it's not even there. So you are not the kind of fella I'm likely to fuck with, Major.
It's the makings of a potentially potent force against it if they can somehow work together.
What was the most surprising, exciting part of the process for you?
It's always surprising when you're breaking story, where you allow yourself to go and where you allow the writers to go and where they take you. And, the story and the characters tell you where they want to go ultimately. So that's always the most surprising to me.
I think I feel the same way. The discovery of this story, piece by piece, character by character, twist and reveal by twist and reveal, was the most thrilling, exciting part in terms of the surprises, because we didn't know where it was going. We were figuring it out. So we're sort of, we're in the shoes of these characters, living it and experiencing it and going along for the ride. I think the other aspect that blew me away really were the visual effects. Obviously, we all know visual effects elevate your show and they take it to another level, but I could not believe some of the stuff that was achieved with this amazing VFX team, Daryl and Steve, who what they did was not just on the level, I think, of a feature film, but it surpassed it in some aspects. I mean, I know we're on episode 3, but you think about episode 2, the pickle jail, Lily's dad, the tactile nature of his skin, the way he's spitting out the water. I mean, it's it's some of the most extraordinary VFX work I've seen this side of like Pirates of the Caribbean.
They showed that scene at Comic-Con New York, and my kids were in the audience, and my son is only 8. And I figure, they'll show short scenes. They'll be able to get out of there. It'll be fine. He was absolutely traumatized by that scene.
Oh, good.
He refuses to ever eat a pickle again. He will not go in the pickle aisle. He's terrified by those. They had at the premiere this wall of, those pickles and stuff with the body parts in them. He just ran screaming away from that. So it was effective.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
The young cast you guys assembled is phenomenal. What's the trick for writing dialogue that feels true to the experience of being a kid, but still carries the weight of real world stakes?
I don't know if there's a trick as much as we were all kids once, and I'm not going to say easy, but there's an accessible aspect to just trying to remember, okay, what was it like when I was that age? What was I thinking about? What did I care about? What mattered to me? Friends, and what were those things that sort of made you who you were? One of the fun things about writing a show like this is you get to pretend to be one of the losers. And there's a million ways to crack story, and there's a million ways to approach this. But one of, I think, our favorite ways is we'd actually ask ourselves, what would you do in this situation? If you were 12 and this was your lot in life, what would you do next? And a lot of episode 3 was thinking about, what would you do next? You're in this situation. You have to prove that this entity exists. How would you handle it? So that's thing one, is just the pure act of imagination. I think the second component is when you're actually making it and rehearsing, you're starting to get to know these kids and hearing their voices. So you're writing to young actors, brilliant young actors in this case. And then there's a third element, I guess, at play in our show in particular, which is how do kids in 1962 talk? There's no universal timeless child. There are aspects of childhood and adolescence that are timeless, but kids talk differently in 1962. They often thought differently. Their world was quite different in many ways. We obviously were not around in 1962, but we have the benefit of a lot of great other works of fiction that I think accurately reflect sort of the norms and speech patterns and all that stuff. And so it was a process, but it's never easy.
Gotta take a whiz. Wait, I thought you said we couldn't leave the circle until it was done. No, you can't. You just have to come back quickly. My cousin told me. You said your uncle did it. Well, yeah, but I mostly heard about it from my cousin, so...
You didn't hear it from him?
Well, not the whole thing.
This is so messed up.
We're leaving.
Hold on, guys. He was just trying to help. Making up all this mumbo-jumbo? Come on, monsters, ghosts, it's all mumbo-jumbo.
Yeah, we were all kids once, and you just, put yourself in their shoes and talk that way. And, if you talk to Andy, he'll just say, he's still sort of a 12-year-old boy in a grown man's body. So he brought a lot. He helped a lot. And he's obviously done it with IP chapters 1 and 2. He's great working with kids. He did it with Mama, with those 2 great kid performances. So, he's a lot of the special sauce in writing for the kids and getting those performances.
So let's talk about the introduction of Rose and the introduction of the sort of Indigenous story and how that then melds with the African-American story. It feels like you're playing with themes of colonialism and othering in a really interesting way.
Well, if Derry is a microcosm of America, and we always say that, Stephen King made Derry a microcosm of America, you can't tell the story of America without telling the story of the Indigenous people of America and the stewards of the land. And, Rose and the Scotawapscot tribe were the stewards of Derry before it was Derry. And they learned this terrible secret about the thing in the woods. But, the Scotawapscot knew to live in harmony with all living creatures, and they respected that as a natural part of the land, as something that's here, as inevitable. And so they tried to just keep it small, contain it, stay out of its space. It had its space. They had their space. And then, you're right, colonialism. The settlers came in. They started to move into land that was, forbidden. And they were told that, and they did it anyway because, hey, colonialism, hubris, they just kept going and going. They found a place, manifest destiny, all that stuff. And they started to get consumed by a creature greedier and hungrier than they were. So, we're trying to tell the story of America in a big way.
We were excited about the possibility of exploring stories and going into spaces that there was just not room for, in the context of a 2-hour film. And it meant different stories and different perspectives and different ways into Derry, different access points. And how do you talk about the American experience without talking about the Indigenous community? How do you talk about the American experience without talking about the African-American experience? So it felt like, an opportunity creatively, but also the minute we understood that we were going to have Leroy Hanlon and his family at the center of this, the minute we understood, this was one of the first things we understood, that we were going to be telling the story of the black spot, we knew that we were going to be telling a story that intersected in a very real, raw, and emotional way with the truth of the African-American experience in America. So it all felt very organic creatively to the show we were creating. And so we, took that very seriously. We're obviously making a pop commercial horror show, but we also knew that we were touching on fictionalized versions of all too real, horrific history. And so we were, we approached it very cautiously and with a lot of seriousness and respect. And I also think that, it is a creature, a villain who uses fear as a weapon and who uses amnesia as a very powerful tool. The citizens of Derry tend to be anesthetized to the horrors around them. And so that is a tool of villains and oppressors and bad guys, fictional and non-fictional, since time immemorial. So it felt like, particularly in thinking about Indigenous community, the African-American community in Derry, what are the stories that are passed down generation to generation? Obviously, we get to explore that a bit more with the Indigenous community, given that our way into the African-American community of Derry is mostly through Leroy, who's new to town. But with the Indigenous community, who have been there since, before it was even called Derry, obviously, we were curious how a tradition of storytelling, how a tradition itself was a weapon against it. We talked a lot about memory as a powerful moral weapon, and this community's commitment to not having their stories erased ultimately is one of the key methods by which they're able to protect themselves. And if you think about it, chapter 2 particularly, you only get to see that Indigenous community very briefly, and it's really only told through the eyes of Mike Hanlon. And we wanted to give these characters real agency. We wanted them to be the drivers of their own story. And you see that personified in certainly in Rose, a character who we get to know a lot better over the course of episode 3, who, again, without spoiling where this goes, Rose is one of the great heroes of Derry, one of the great hidden heroes of Derry. And I'm excited for audiences to sort of go on that journey with her and see where she takes it.
But there's a darker side to that stewardship too. We didn't want to just tell a magical trope. We wanted to tell an honest trope about, when you're dealing with the stewardship of land, when you're dealing with containing a creature, we wanted to explore the complications of that kind of stewardship.
And I would give a particular shout out to John Bear Mitchell, who came in, and he's a professor, and he gave us such insight into the world of the Indigenous community. We learned so much from him as we wrote these episodes, and obviously had the benefit of an amazing team of writers to construct it with. But John was just an incredible creative partner, an incredible resource. And I think to the extent that that community feels authentic, I give a lot of credit to him, and I give a lot of credit
to Kimberly
Guerrero,
the actor
who plays Rose, who, even though she is credited exclusively as an actor on this piece, she did far more than act in it.
She filled the cup. I mean, she brought the authenticity, and she speaks so eloquently on this subject. So she was very helpful.
To wrap up, you have Welcome to Derry under your belt, Crystal Lake on the horizon. You guys have thought about horror as much as anybody else has, really. What role do you think horror plays in culture today? What's the function of horror in society?
I think horror movies, horror fiction, I think it helps us process the real horrors of life in a way where we can be entertained and scared, and it can feel somewhat disposable, but, you can sneak in some there. You can sneak in some real issues, and you come out of these entertainments with a little more to discuss, and maybe feeling a little better about yourself and about the world. And, it just helps you process those things. That's I think, the role of horror.
I agree with what Brad said more generally. I think specifically when it comes to this show, because we're dealing with a town where people don't react to horrors that they should react to, I actually think this show functions as a love letter to horror in more ways than one. It is pro-horror, not in the sense that we want horrible things to happen, of course not, but it is an argument that there are things in this world, and certainly in Derry, Maine, worth being horrified at, and that horror is an important response to those things. And so it is in many ways a pro-horror piece and a reminder that when there are great evils out there, that they're worth being horrified over and doing something about. And I think that part of the secret sauce of the It brand of horror is that it's actually a very hopeful brand of horror. I think there's lots of trauma, there's lots of darkness, but there's something fundamentally hopeful about the idea that a group of people can come together bound by love and unified belief in one another as much as anything else and have a positive impact, can fight back against the darkness, can give light a fighting chance. That's a powerful theme. It's why I think the book has been so timeless and why I hope the show resonates with audiences still to this day. It's certainly why it resonates with us.
You can hear how much care went into building this story.
Yeah, and I love that Jason shouted out one of my favorite performers in this series, and in this particular episode, Kimberly Guerrero, who plays Rose.
Oh, absolutely. Rose is such a compelling character, and Kimberly brings a quiet, grounded power in her performance. And in episode 3, we see her origin story unfold, revealing a woman who understands the land and the evil beneath it in ways no one else can.
Derry's funny that way. No matter how long you spend here, the further away you get, the more it all just seems to fade.
You may know her as Auntie B on Reservation Dogs, one of my favorite shows the last 10 years. She's also an enrolled member of the Colville tribe with Salish Kootenai and Cherokee heritage, a professor at UC Riverside, and a tireless advocate for Indigenous storytelling.
And now she's bringing that much-needed perspective to welcome to Derry as Rose, a woman deeply connected to her community and to the secrets of this haunted town. We are so, so excited to welcome Kimberly Norris Guerrero. Thank you so much for being here.
Princess, Mark, thank you. Audience,
Yay.
thank you for joining us. This is so exciting.
This is so wonderful. So before being cast as Rose, what was your relationship to horror? Because I think as both like a consumer, but also in terms of how horror has sort of used Indigenous folklore as like a wholesale catch-all grab. And how did that impact your relationship to the genre?
So I have always, as an Indigenous person, I think I naturally gravitate toward storytelling and toward, I've always had a sense of the spiritual world and the liminal space between our walking around everyday life and the world that we can't see but is still there. And the beings that we can't see but are still there, but you feel them. So all those little mysterious things, I've been very in tune with that since, my first memory. And so I think horror plays into that. So anything kind of supernatural, metaphysical, spiritual, I was really, really into. I read those books, very much into that world, and horror fit good, especially good horror felt kind of squarely in that. If it felt like it was rooted in story and not just gore for gore's sake. So I am watching a show. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. I went to school at UCLA. I'm probably 18, 19 years old, and I went by myself to see a new movie called Hellraiser.
One of my favorites.
And I didn't know, keep in mind, this is pre-internet, and I didn't know what it was about. I just thought the poster was badass. The guy with the pins in it, let's go. And so I think it was, like a matinee, and I was in there by myself. There weren't that many people. And I had a supernatural experience at the end of that film where something came out from the screen. And I remember sitting in the theater, like trying to pinch myself going, this isn't real, right? This isn't real, right? But I could feel myself being pinched and I could still see what was coming out of the screen. And I knew it couldn't hurt me, but I knew it was beyond just entertainment. And it was probably, I would say maybe 10 to 15 minutes, I'm guessing, before the film ended. So it'd be at the climax of that film. And I got up and I walked out and I never saw another horror film after that because I didn't feel like it was just for me, as a storyteller. And so I mean, even the 90s Pennywise, the 90s It came out I believe shortly after that. And I love Stephen King. And I was just like, nope. And Tim Curry's It, I'm like, nope, don't want to see that clown. And then when Bill's and, Andy and Barbara's It came out, I would literally turn the channel and the commercial would come on. Like in broad daylight, it's just, go somewhere else. So when I auditioned for this piece, you sign an NDA and you're doing an audition that you don't even know. You're not playing the character. It's not a scene from the series. It's just the tone is similar. I was offered the role and I said, that's great. I really love this character and what it sounds like it is, but what project is this? And they said, it's It. And I'm like, hold up. Like I couldn't even watch the commercials for this show. And so I didn't really have any kind of depth of knowledge about it. So I was like, let me watch the movies. I watched the movies. I said, if it's possible, would Barbara and Andy want to talk with me about representation? And And within, honestly, probably 36 hours, I was on a lengthy Zoom call with Andy and Barbara, and it was like kind of meeting family you just hadn't met yet. And we were already kind of in the sandbox playing and thinking of ways to investigate the Indigenous storyline and what they already had in mind. It was interesting because I had a long list of questions, and I did not get to any of those questions. They had already answered them for me.
Oh, that's amazing.
In a really satisfactory way. So it just feels really good to kind of come home to horror in that way and kind of be the spiritual heart of the series and thinking about how I want to talk about the series to the audience. I came up with two very simple words, and that is Rose knows.
Perfect.
Rose knows, y'all. Like, she knows everything, everything.
So the show is set in the 1960s, a massive time of cultural change and upheaval. How did you prepare to capture that era authentically, especially in the framing of this Native character who is representing a community? And I know that's always a big word, representation, but like, it is a character that we don't see often. And so like, how did you craft that and also balance storytelling and representation all together? Because I find that often ends up being a dance.
It is a dance, and I really appreciate you framing that out that way, Princess, because a lot of people don't realize, and nor should we. I mean, that's honestly our job as storytellers, to do all that heavy lifting underneath so that it feels effortless for you as an audience member. But so that the community you are representing, you have these little nods and these little inside jokes or Easter eggs for them that maybe only that community would know. And they're like, oh, she's one of us, or she's listened to us, or she knows us. We were working with a Penobscot elder, John Bear Mitchell, very closely. I couldn't have done any of the work that I did without John Bear in my life. And, Andy and Barbara and the team saying, always being able to say, can I go to John? They're like, go to John Bear. So like always having this deep, deep connection to John Bear, his family, his relatives, his tribe, his community, so that everything feels very rooted in that region. And even specifically that community, because it's completely different than my community, other than us being, indigenous to Turtle Island. And that's a really great place to start. But that's how we know where to start. There is a protocol amongst our nations and amongst our cultures. And that is the way that you go in with protocol, is to go to an elder and to go to a wisdom keeper. And of course, my spiritual obligation to love and serve and honor the Penobscot people, past, present, and future. So there's that aspect. Then there's the context of Derry itself and Rose in Derry. There was so much angst in the world at that time. And there was so much, it just felt like it could teeter either way. Like things could kind of sort themselves out and kind of get on a really nice track. Or it could be very chaotic and things kind of might devolve from there. And 62 was kind of a nexus point for that. JFK was still in office. RFK was still, doing some really wonderful work. Most importantly, I think for context of our show, the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King working through segregation. And I think that year was the year that University of Mississippi was reintegrated. And so it's just like all of these things are bubbling up. And then in the midst of all that, you have the existential crisis of nuclear war. And then, of course, you've got monsters, and the military are doing really crazy things, and Russia's got this, it's like the hype of like, Russia's got these secret weapons. Do we have secret weapons? And then are there aliens, and do we have that alien? I mean, there's just so much going on. The race for space, I think John Glenn had just done a lap around the Earth, for the first time. So it was this great victory for the U.S. in the space race. So everything is culminating in every different direction. So here is Rose in the heart of Derry, carrying this ancestral knowledge and fighting and protecting the world from this great evil. And so that, in a way, it just kind of handed itself to me on a platter. So it was really, it was all there, and I had everything in my toolkit to be able to embody this character and bring this kind of depth and humanity and care to this story.
As you began building that toolkit, were there any family members? Were there any community leaders, any historical figures that you used as inspiration to put into that toolkit? Was there anybody that you leaned back on and said, you know what, I'm borrowing this little bit of you to help Rose come alive?
Yes, absolutely. There was one historical figure that I grounded everything in, and that was a young woman named Clara Paul. Please get your phones, get your device, whatever. Google this young woman now. She's Penobscot. I don't even, just see her. And that will tell you all you need to know about how I grounded my character in such strength and humor and badassery. And so I just use this very real Penobscot young woman to help me with my history. And it was a joy to be able to find somebody from within the specificity of that area. She was and is my anchor.
Because Rose knows.
Rose knows.
Exactly. Rose knows. Rose is rooted. So in this episode, we witnessed the origin story of Rose and Francis, aka General Shaw. And then we jump decades later and see their reunion as their adult selves. Can you talk about their relationship and how you felt when you performed this scene?
I immediately, the first time that I read it, I immediately felt like this is her first love and she never goes back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's unmarried. She's committed to a task that she has, an existential task that she has that's been passed down from her ancestors. And I think in her mind, I think there was something very deep and very promising. And that was kind of her first love, best love. And she's like, I don't, it's just no one else out there for me. It wasn't so much about Frances, but just about that sense of first love.
Yeah.
And you see how she understood how much of her energy and her heart it took when he left. And I think that she understood, I can't have that in my life. Romance, this kind of connection to another person in that way, I can't do my duty to my people and to the world and have this, and I'm willing to sacrifice that. So if that makes sense, it's, yes, Francis was wonderful, and yes, it would have been interesting to see what could have happened. But I think even had he stayed around, well, if he'd stayed around town, he would have gotten eaten. But no, but I think that she would have come to a place where I am going to choose duty over love. But I do think, when she sees him, and it very much felt that way when James and I were in character in Secondhand Rose, it very much felt like our characters kind of embodied us, and that love was there, and that spark was there. That sweetness and the purity, but also the strength of first love. It's just so pure and kind of timeless.
And then, on the heels of that sort of reunion, we watch as Rose discovers the truth about what General Shaw is doing.
You're in charge of the digs. What are you doing out there, Francis?
And it does seem as if this story is sort of a microcosm of the Indigenous experience in America, which is we welcomed and then we're betrayed. Can you talk about any sense of context you were able to provide to this story? Any sense of, in addition to the young love, in addition to the reconnection, just what it says, what that story says about the world at large?
Absolutely. And there's a sense, I don't know what the word is, it's beyond betrayal, but it is a very personal betrayal, but it is a deep sense of just dumbfoundedness. Like, I cannot comprehend. And it reminds me, I'm sitting right now on the Lenape-Hoking on Mannahatta and the Jalapa-Chenquela. So we're sitting on Lenape land. We're actually sitting on the Indian Trail because this studio is on Broadway. So we're sitting on an Indian Trail. Yesterday, I went down to Wall Street and I was standing on top of the Palisades because the wall in Wall Street was built to keep the Indians out. And just kind of having, a moment there with that. And so it's this sense of, I don't understand how you as a fellow human being, and then most Indigenous folks see other human beings as relatives. So it deepens the betrayal. And Rose is incredibly smart and savvy, even for, being kind of this small town girl. Maybe she hasn't been off into the big city or anything like that, but she just kind of has a knowing of the world and the ways of the world. And she knows it's, this boy who's not from her, tribe and vice versa, they could both get in trouble. But there was a connection there, a deep, deep connection. So it is a metaphor, of how can you, my relative, hurt me this way? Don't you see me? Don't you know that I bleed too? Don't you know that my heart beats too? don't you know that I love my mom and dad? That I love my brothers and sisters? You know, don't you know that I cry when somebody leaves me? I mean, it's just all these really basic human needs for connection and understanding and belonging. And so it's a really beautiful way, and I hopefully not an in-your-face way, of explaining to everyone kind of what's at the heart of this pain and the 500 years of what in the heck are y'all doing? You know, we're here to help. We're going to help you plant crops. We're going to help you, get by here. There's plenty for everyone. If you just let us show you and, become part of the circle, don't destroy it.
And I think to build off of that, the hubris that he has to think that he and the military can contain something better than that community in Derry can, because they are like the American government, so they have this responsibility. And I think that in its own way is like another expansion of Manifest Destiny of like, we're going to take this alien relic and we're going to just do whatever with it. It's like only they would think that.
Absolutely. It is being gracious about it. It's such a childish, childlike, way to approach something that is ancient and bigger than oneself. And I'm still parsing through the concept of colonization and colonialism and its effect, not just on the colonized, but on the colonizer, and how it harms us both equally in different ways. And my heart, my goal, my entire life and my career is built around reconciliation, building that muscle of empathy that has become almost an obsolescence. Like it's just, I feel like it's getting stripped from us every single day. Our ability to empathize, come alongside and imagine ourselves in somebody's shoes, that this is the home they were raised in. This was their parents' home. And how do those things trickle down and make you stronger or poison you? And so that's why I am so proud to be a part of a story like this that feels like an antidote to the dehumanization that is sweeping our world and has been. And I think colonization is kind of at the forefront of that.
Yeah. I mean, the first sacrifice at the altar of progress is humanity, right?
There you go.
So have you seen the show yet?
Yes.
Knowing how you feel about horror, knowing how you feel about going to the movies and having supernatural experiences of things coming out of the screen, how did you feel watching the end of that first episode?
I felt like a homecoming. It reminded me of why I loved horror so much, when I was a young person. And I am a big fan of the reliable narrator because I go so deep into story. And so as terrifying as it is, knowing Andy and Barbara's heart and knowing our team and how much care everybody has put into this and knowing what the ultimate goal of storytelling is, it allows you then to go on the ride and not turn away when it gets too hard or too gory or too whatever it is, but to just kind of face it and move through it. And so it did. It felt very like a full circle moment. Like I came back to my 14-year-old self and went, this is why I love great horror.
Yeah.
It feels good to be back into this place and using this genre to help tell a story.
It's funny. There's a book I read a while ago called Sapiens, which is the history of Homo sapiens. And the bit that struck me that I continue to carry with me is the idea that what separated Homo sapien from every other version of man beforehand was story. That Homo sapiens were the first ones who told stories, and the stories you could pass those stories.
That's right.
They could travel, they could teach, they can help connect people and help bring them further along on the path. And, as a person who lives in a creative world and who has a creative life, like that feeling of story is what makes us different, and yet story is what makes us the same. And I think horror may be more unique than anything else because it prompts involuntary response from us.
A visceral response.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
horror and comedy are the only ones really that prompt unbidden emotion. And the ability to use horror to help bring us together, to help remind us that we are united by what makes us scared in the dark, I think is a beautiful
catharsis
thing.
of fear. Yeah.
The catharsis of fear. That's really beautiful. And it feeds right into something that is at the core of my pedagogy as a professor, my engine as an actor and a writer and a director, just as a storyteller, capital S storyteller, but the belief that story is medicine. And, of course, within our culture, within any indigenous culture, and even within modern medicine, there's good medicine and there's bad medicine. And in our culture, bad medicine is pretty much ubiquitous for intentional harm or doing something without a sense of how it might harm. I don't care that this might harm somebody.
Right. Apathy.
I want to make money. I don't care how this affects the humanity involved in creating something. I want the money, right? And so I will use you to get ahead and get what I want. So that bad medicine can go either way. There is a way to create good medicine with story. Within my community, a storyteller was a role just as a medicine person, a war leader, a chief. And then within that, they would also have storytelling competitions. And so this is the key. On top of being, having good medicine, you had to be entertaining. It had to be entertaining. So I love that marriage of, storytelling as medicine and having a reason and an understanding for the greater good, but it has to be entertaining. That's my personal take.
Kimberly Norris Guerrero, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for helping Welcome to Derry be good medicine.
Aw, thank you. Lim Lim.
Well, we survived this week's trip to Derry.
And next time, we're going to tempt fate again and go deeper into the mind of Dick Hallorann himself.
Or at most, the brilliant actor who brings him to life, Chris Chalk.
And we'll also be joined by John Bear Mitchell, the show's cultural consultant, whom Kimberly mentioned earlier. 2
guests, 1 haunted town, and us. What could possibly go wrong?
It's like we're our own spirit Halloween, waiting to pounce on you. But we'll see you next week, if you're brave enough to return. The Welcome to Derry podcast is a production of HBO in collaboration with Spoke Media. The show is hosted by me, Marc Bernardin, and Princess Weeks.
Jenna Burnett is our senior producer, and Tess Ryan is our supervising producer.
Our associate producers are Addie Vaughn, with help from Montserrat Rodriguez.
Sound design and mix by Sammy Syret.
Our executive producer for Spoke Media is Aliyah Tavakolian.
Special thanks to Michael Gluckstadt, Allison Cohen-Sorokach, Kenya Reyes, and Aaron Kelly from the HBO Max podcast team.
Thanks for listening and see you next week.